On August 31st, 2023, a trailblazer shattered barriers, ascending to the esteemed position of the first black police chief in Miami Beach, Florida. His name, Wayne Jones. Surrounded by a chorus of support from esteemed dignitaries, family, and the resounding voice of a united city, Chief Wayne Jones took an oath that resonated far beyond the city limits. As he stood, his hands on the badge, the weight of history and hope converged into a single moment. Tonight, we invite you to delve into the extraordinary journey of this Bahamian native, tracing the footprints of his past that led him to the helm of Miami Beach's law enforcement. His story is not just one of personal triumph, but a testament to the resilience and unwavering spirit that defines a leader. Join us as we unravel the layers of Chief Wayne Jones's narrative, exploring the values, experiences, and aspirations that has sculpted Miami's newest guardian.
Wayne, first of all, thank you for giving us this opportunity to talk today. I want to begin the discussion, though, with a little bit of your history.
Sure.
And who you are. The Bahamian people really have an immense pride in your accomplishment. I don't know if you know how much, but help the audience to understand who you are and where you've come from.
Well, listen, I am Bahamian through and through, and I'm very, very, very proud of my heritage. I'm very proud of my birthplace, my country. I'm very proud of Bahamians as a whole. I don't think I'm a special Bahamian, quite frankly. I know so many more Bahamians who are far more accomplished than I am, and I'm proud of that. But I'm a local boy, born and raised in Nassau. Grew up in Garden Hills. Went to public school. I'm a product of public school. C.W. Sawyer, S.E. McPherson, A.F. Adley. Good education at all those schools, I think, and sort of set the groundwork for me being what I am today. You know, I had a teacher in high school by the name of George Neely. I'm sure he's long past right now, and he was a scientist, taught science and biology, and really sort of imbued in me what it meant to get a really good education and maximize your education and leverage it in a way to be successful. And so oftentimes when we think about where I am in life, I think about George Neely.
And it's interesting you should say that because, you know, in so many ways, we're at a crossroads with education. How did a sound education help to open doors and lead to the success that you have?
That's a good question. So referring back to my experience with George Neely and how the love of teaching his students and how he got so much joy from us doing well, that set the tone for me. Truth of the matter is I felt like I was well prepared for college and anything beyond that because of the work I put in when I studied for my GCEs. I'm not sure you guys even do it anymore. It was a comprehensive exams. And so I worked harder doing that than I did for any of my degrees when I came to college. And so it made it, I think, somewhat easier, if that makes sense, having that sound foundation in education.
How did you now transition from life in the Bahamas to here in the United States?
Oh, it was not a straight line. So I always wanted to fly airplanes, and let me back up a second. Can you repeat that? So from I was 5 years old, my dad moved back here to the U.S. in Miami specifically, and so from 5 years old, I spent most of my summer months here, and I spent every other Christmas here in Miami. I always wanted to fly airplanes, and after I finished high school in NASA, I did a couple of jobs here for a short period of time, and came over to go to Miami-Dade College to get a 2-year degree in aviation, which I did, and I got a pilot's license. Ended up going to Florida Memorial College, now Florida Memorial University, historically black college, and got a couple of undergraduate degrees there, and then fell into police work. And the rest is, as they say, history.
You say fell into police work.
I did. I did.
Describe how, or why did you use the term fall into?
So I was sort of working in the social service space with a fraternity brother of mine. He had always wanted to become a cop. His entire life, he dreamed about becoming a police officer. I never even thought about becoming a cop, to be honest with you. And he convinced me to apply at the Miami Beach Police Department with him. The police department was doing a huge recruitment at the time. I applied with him. I got hired. He didn't. He became a state trooper instead. And 2 years after that, he left that job because he hated being a cop and became a school teacher. I still think he's teaching school right now.
What is it that endeared you to this profession? Obviously, this was not a career choice, but you got in, you were accepted, and you have done some things now to move up through the ranks.
Yeah. So I think what it was that motivated me to be so persistent about it is the fact that I was told I can't. The background process to become a police officer here is somewhat tedious and lengthy. And part of that process includes having to do a polygraph test. And that's where they ask you a series of questions and they use a machine to decipher whether or not you're lying. And one of those questions had to do with the use of marijuana, which I've never done, never will. Not because, this is indictment on people who do marijuana. It's just never been my thing. My grandmother many, many years ago as a boy told me, son, if you do drugs, you would break my heart. I never wanted to break my grandmother's heart, so I've never done it. At any rate, I thought it was a tool being used to disqualify me from the program, which energized me to push even harder. And so post that polygraph test, I reached out to the person responsible for the background investigations, pled my case with that person. They gave me another opportunity with another polygrapher, which I subsequently passed. And so along the way, there's been other similar roadblocks that sort of just energized and motivated me to succeed.
When you say roadblocks, the reality is you're a black man living in America. Mm-hmm. How many of those roadblocks do you think may have been due to your color, your race, or even your original nationality? Maybe people thought, Bahamian versus American.
Yeah. I don't know. I'd like to think in an ideal world, ideal place, none of that mattered. I don't know. My goal was to work as hard as I possibly can to stand out as a candidate, particularly in competitive promotional processes, to just do the very, very best I could. And I think, by and large, that's what propelled me forward.
What are some of the things you think helped you to stand out?
The fact that I gave 110% every day. The fact that when it came to working with the community trusted me, respected me, and believed when I spoke to them about what police work was like, some of the actions we took, they believed it because I was being honest and genuine with them.
You've had an illustrious career in this field. I want to talk a little bit about some of the work that you have done, specifically setting up the department's human trafficking unit. That's a very prolific problem nowadays, even for us in the Bahamas. We're dealing a dealing with that a lot. Why was it important for you to set up something like that? And what kind of success has it had?
It was important for me to set that up because I look at it as a form of modern day slavery, right? Particularly when it comes to sex trafficking. And I'll make this analogy. A drug dealer can sell a kilo of cocaine or whatever they're selling, heroin, one time, right? One time. When it comes to trafficking human beings, that person can be sold over and over and over and over again. And I also think about it in the context that that person being sold and used is loved by somebody else. That's a daughter of somebody, that's a sister, a mom in some cases. And I think being a man of color and thinking back about our history, where we were sold and sold and sold, it's ungodly. And as a police officer, as a boss in a police department, I felt it was my duty to do something to change it.
When we return after this break, we uncover the heart, passion, and vision of the man behind the badge, a beacon of change and a catalyst for unity in the diverse city of Miami Beach. Stay with us. We continue our conversation with Chief Wayne Jones, delving deeper into the core of his leadership and the driving force behind his transformative initiatives within the Miami Beach Police Department. From the sun-kissed shores of the Bahamas to the dynamic urban landscape of Miami Beach, Chief Jones's journey is not just a tale of personal accomplishment, but a narrative interwoven with the vibrant threads of his Bahamian heritage. In this segment, we explore the foundations of Chief Jones's leadership, how the rhythms of his Bahamian roots have harmonized with the pulse of Miami Beach, shaping his vision, igniting his passions, and infusing his strategies with a unique perspective.
The other initiative that I'd like to speak about was your work in establishing a homeless resource program. Mm-hmm. Why was that necessary, and what was the effect of something like that?
So I started that maybe 16 years ago. Mm-hmm. At the time, I was a sergeant. I was in charge of our community affairs office. And we had a pervasive homeless issue in the city. At the time, probably as many as 600 homeless people living in the city. And something needed to be done with them. And arresting them was not the solution, right? Because the fact of the matter is that many people are homeless through no fault of their own. They suffer from mental illness. They suffer from alcohol or drug abuse. Some of them just suffer from poverty. And I thought, as a police department, we're in the business of public service. And we needed to find a smart way to positively impact the homeless population that did not include taking them to jail. Now granted, there are some people homeless who are criminals as well. And we do take them to jail when they have to go to jail. But the ones that are not, there needed to be other ways to address them. And so there are a number of direct service providers in the Miami area that provide shelter and care to homeless people. And I thought the smart thing to do was to coordinate with those folks, train our police officers in how to provide outreach services to them, how to talk to people, how to convince them to get help that they desperately need to better themselves and become, I think, positive members of society. So that's why it was important to start it. And I can tell you the program grew beyond my wildest dreams. We now have a team that has set the standard nationally. Our team of homeless outreach officers has traveled throughout the country teaching other police departments how to do it and how to do it right. So I'm very, very proud of it.
You hit on something I think that's very important. The fact that you thought it necessary to train officers in how to deal with humanitarian work. And why was that important? Because we don't see a police officer in that role,
Yeah.
particularly in our context. He or she is the law enforcer. But now you're talking about training a police officer in a whole different line of work almost.
Yeah, listen. I think the job of policing and police officers have changed over the years. You know, we were once seen as law enforcers. We put people in jail. We keep law in order. But police officers are members of society just like everybody else. When they put on a uniform, they represent the law and they do what they have to do to keep people safe. But part of being members of society, homelessness and other quality of life issues impact all of us, even police officers. And I think any modern society has to transition in the way police officers perform their jobs, in what's a priority for police officers, and in the way police officers are perceived when doing their jobs.
Interesting. Another thing that you're credited with doing is helping to bring a little bit more diversity to the force with the number of female recruits,
Yes.
Moving from 12% to 18% when we talk about new hires. How did you achieve that, and why was that important to you?
Important for me, a couple of reasons. First, I had a very, very strong mom and grandmother who raised me. And so I understand the value of women, not only as mothers and grandmothers and sisters and wives, but as leaders in this world. I understand the value of tapping into a human resource, particularly during a time and era in police work in America where recruiting police officers has become very, very challenging, right? And I thought, well, we've got this human resource out there, more women than men, 51% of the population are women. Why not leverage that and hire them to fill our ranks? And so it started off that way, and it was really, really successful. We've hired some amazing women police officers over the past almost decade. And then the International Association of Chiefs of Police came up with this initiative called 30 by 30. And what that means is they want police departments to invest in and dedicate and commit to hiring 30% of their staff to be police officers, female police officers by the year 2030. And we've signed on to that. And so we're well on our way to achieve that. And I'm excited about it. And I think we'll get there.
Something I want to refer to in a clip that I saw, which actually led us to this interview, I think when you were receiving your title and you recognized your dad as someone who warned you about the very same police department that you are now heading. Looking at the issues that are facing a modern police department with things like public trust, and how do you begin to change that narrative in the community so young black men or men in general or people in general don't see the police as consistently the enemy?
Yeah. Well, I think it's really about communication, right? I think it's really about getting in front of people, talking face to face in many, many cases, talking to those organizations that represent young men, some of them black men that look like me, representing those people and telling them what we're all about, showing them what we're all about. And we're genuine, we're real, right? We're not always going to get it right. We're going to make mistakes. But I can tell you, when we do make mistakes, I'm going to be the first one to tell you, we screwed up. But I'm also going to be the first to tell you, here's how we're going to fix it. Here's how we're going to get better. I think building that trust is the key to that success.
I want to talk about your current role now and being the chief of this area. First of all, I want to talk about the dynamics of Miami Beach and the things that people don't know about having to police this area 24 hours a day.
Sure. Well, I can tell you, this is a tourist town, much like the Bahamas is a tourist country. This is a tourist town. And all the things you have associated with a tourist town comes here. We have drugs is sold prevalently on the streets. We have a degree of prostitution that happens because it's a tourist town. We have tourists being victims of robberies and thefts because tourists usually have cash and nice cameras and all the things that tourists travel with. So we have all those issues to deal with, and I think sometimes people don't realize that because we work. When I say we, my team and I, we work very, very hard on insulating and protecting our tourist population from that for obvious reasons. It is the lifeblood of our economy, and we've got to protect it at all costs.
And how do you get your community to understand that? Because you said, protecting our tourists, protecting our nest egg, and these are things we hear all the time in the Bahamian context. But how do you get the people that live here, the people that you serve, to get to understand that, hey, you've got to protect your tourists?
Yeah, I think that's fairly easy. We've got a fairly active Chamber of Commerce with a large membership. And I think from a business perspective, they all understand the value of protecting that resource, all right? Protecting everything we have so that tourists can continue to come. Because when tourists don't come, we all hurt. Everybody hurts financially.
What is it that motivates you every day to get out of bed and come to this job?
Making this organization better. Better today than it was yesterday. Better tomorrow than it is today. That's what motivates me.
And what are the challenges that sometimes make you want to pull the covers over your head?
I tell you, very long days. I'm usually in the office by 5:36 in the morning. Don't really get home until well into the evening. The days are very, very long, but it's worth it. And the sacrifice of that is really to my family, young children. I'm sort of juggling, trying to create and sustain this work-life balance. Right? They pay for daddy being at work all the time. So some days it gets hard, but my little girl says, "Daddy, I don't want you to go to work today." But daddy has to, because there are people depending on daddy to do his job, to keep the city, his residents, and his visitors safe.
And I asked you that because I know a lot of police officers who have families struggle with that. Duty always calls. And how do you strike that balance? Not just being there physically, but even mentally, knowing that you might miss a recital, or you might miss a game, or.
Yeah, when I grew up, we had rotary dial phones, right? In today's modern world, and I think young people are lucky to have this. In today's modern world, they have these phones now that you can do video chats and stuff. And so I do a lot of video chats. I do video chats in the mornings when they're on their way to school. I do video chats in the afternoons when they're away from school. If I travel for work, I do video chats constantly to maintain that connection, which I think is important. Sort of trying to be the best parent I can, but from afar.
Good stuff. You have spent the majority of your adult life in this area, in the Miami, South Florida area. You've come from the Bahamas. You have that connection. What are some of the things that you see in this city as a Bahamian that makes you proud?
Well, I mean, understanding the history of this city, understanding the history of South Florida in general, and then understanding and knowing the contributions of Bahamians to the general area. Bahamians are credited for building Coconut Grove, which is really a vibrant part of the city of Miami. They're credited for building much of the city of Miami Beach and making it what it is today, but not for Bahamians' contribution, but not for Bahamian sacrifice. We wouldn't be, in my opinion, this city wouldn't be what it is today.
Do you see yourself as a role model for young black men, whether they be Bahamian, American, Jamaican, whatever? Do you see yourself as a role model? Do you feel that responsibility?
I do, but I also see the Bahamas as a role model for countries and young people of color throughout the world. I can tell you, growing up in the Bahamas, seeing teachers that look like me, police officers that look like me, doctors, lawyers, politicians that look like me, I always felt there was nothing I couldn't do. Nothing I couldn't do. And so in that context, to be the first black police chief of the city of Miami Beach, I like to think that young people are looking at me and thinking, there's nothing I can't do. Because there's nothing special about Wayne Jones, right? If Wayne Jones can do it, I can do it too.
Very, very powerful. Looking at what you've accomplished in this position and what it's taken to get here now, people look at this and think, oh, well, he's done it all. There can't be anything left. So I have to ask, what's next? Are there still some things out there that you want to accomplish and achieve?
Within this organization, absolutely. Absolutely. I want to make this organization, Miami Beach Police Department, #1 in the country. And I think we can do it. You've got a talent, you've got a skill set internally to make that happen in so many, 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 many ways. I want other organizations to look at us and say, that's what we want to be. That's the pinnacle. Professionalism, of commitment to community and to country and to people.
I've got to ask you, what do you miss about home?
Eating, man. I love crack conch. I love it. I just love Bahamian food. And I tell you, there used to be a really, really good Bahamian place my dad and I would go to when I was younger. And it went out of business. I think the family sold the land. And so there's another one that's not so good. I just want good Bahamian food.
Mm-hmm. But you're in
That's all
South
time.
Florida. I mean, there's always a
I
Bahamian
know.
restaurant or something.
No, and that's the problem. No, not enough, and not close enough. I mean, we need to do more with that. I think good Bahamian food.
Do you think
It's all
there's an
time.
and brings me to another question? Do you think there's an opportunity in this context of Miami Beach for more things that are, indicative of Bahamian culture or
Absolutely.
exposing? Yeah.
Absolutely, I would say throughout South Florida. There's a once a year sort of festival in Coconut Grove. It's like a Gombe festival for a weekend. I wish you had more of that. Because so many people who live here, and we've had a lot of transplants from other parts of the country, particularly post-COVID. There's so many people who live here who have no idea about the Bahamian contribution to South Florida. And it's great and vast.
Fantastic. So as we wrap up, for the many people who are going to be watching this and tuned in and want to learn a little bit more about you and who you are and what you bring to the table, what do you say to those thousands of people who are at home cheering for you and just excited and proud because you've been able to achieve this moment for yourself?
I would say I'm grateful. I am proud of being a Bahamian, and I will shout it from the mountaintops of being Bahamian. And I would not be who I am, what I am today, but not for being raised in the Bahamas.
Unfortunately, Chief Jones could not make it home for the Golden Jubilee celebration this independence. Still, after this interview, we presented him with a special Independence pin, courtesy of the Independence Secretariat. So I know that you said you haven't been home in a while, so I brought you an authentic 50th anniversary pin.
Oh, wow.
Celebrating our independence.
Wow, I'm going to wear this.
So yeah, please do. It's a commemorative pin that was cast just for the 50th anniversary,
Thank
made
you.
by the Independence Secretariat. And so I know you didn't make the celebrations, but I want you to be able to wear it and think of home every time you wear it.
Well, thank you. You know, it's so funny. I still remember as a young boy walking on Independence Drive with my mom and dad for the Independence Parade, West Independence Parade.
Yeah.
I still remember it today.
Well, I know you missed this one.
Yeah.
So next time, you've got to catch one.
Yeah. I was actually 4 years old at the time. I remember it as if it was yesterday.
You remember walking Independence?
Yeah.
Fantastic.
I do remember it.
Wow.
This is amazing.
All right. So, my pleasure. I figured you would.
This is
You
great.
could use something nice as a
This is
memento.
nice.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Good.
Fantastic.
As you can tell, a mosaic of influences propelled Chief Wayne Jones to the forefront of law enforcement innovation. His cultural lineage has been a compass guiding his commitment to community engagement, diversity, and the pursuit of justice in Miami's colorful culture. We are grateful to have had an opportunity to speak to such an accomplished Bahamian and wish him nothing but success in all of his future endeavors.